before we can write a view, it's very important for us to understand what is the request and what is the response. So if you are a web developer, the most fundamental thing that you need to keep in mind is request and a response. For every request, we must send back a response. Just cement this idea in your brain. So let me open up a very simple view to understand what's exactly happening. So this is your browser. Suppose it's a Chrome browser and you want to navigate to a website which is this one, example.com. So what happens is you are going to send a request and this request is going to be received by our server. So in our case, the backend server is written in Django. So we have to process this request and we have to return back a response object. Now this response is received by your Chrome browser and finally it is being rendered on your screen. So just keep this thing in mind. For every request, we need to give back a response. So if you go back to our Django documentation, you can see that, so this index, this is a function, so we will come to this a little later. But right now, just keep this in mind that we are taking a request and we are returning a response. So request, response, request, response. Always keep this thing in your mind. So let us see how we can write our first view. So what we have to do is, just let me copy the code from here. So just go back to your code editor. Now inside our polls application, let us go to this file of views. Now let me just zoom in for you. Let me paste all of the code right over here, and I don't want this command. Let me take this one out and let me save this file. So it's asking me for my formatter. I want to use black. So let's see what's happening in this one. The first thing is, let us import your HTTP request right over here. So this request is actually your HTTP request, and this function always and always has to give back an HTTP response. So again, we have to complete the cycle of the request and the response. So this is the first thing that we are doing. Let us go back to the documentation and let us see what they're asking us to do next. So next thing is, they want us to create a file called as URLs inside the polls directory, and this is the code. So let me copy this. So right now let us go with the flow, and in the next lecture I will explain why we did all of these things. So the next thing that we need to do is, we need to create a file called as urls.py inside our polls application. So this is the new file. Let me paste the code. Let me save it. Now if we have a look at the code, on line number 3, we can see that from the current package, we are importing the module of views. And on line number 6, from the views module, we are accessing the function of index that we just wrote. So if we check out the views file, so this is the function that we wrote, and that's what is being referenced in our urls.py file right over here. And this URL is also given a name which is called as index. Right now you can ignore this as well, because we need to understand a lot of things before I can explain these concepts. But right now let us get our code up and running. So let me save this file, and again let me go back to the documentation. So the next thing that they are saying that we need to go to our my site/urls. So this is the URLs file inside our project, and there we need to paste this code. So let me copy this one, and again let me go back. So this URL file is what we created inside our polls application. So let me collapse this one. I don't need these files. Now let me go to my project of my site. Here we have a urls.py file as well. Let me collapse my sidebar. I don't need all of this comment, so let me just take them out. Now instead of just copying and pasting, I just need one line from the Django official documentation, and that is for this one. Let me just copy this one and let me just paste right over here, and oops, I copied the wrong line. So I wanted this one. Let me copy this file and let me paste it right over here. Now we also need to include one file, and that is also called as include. So remember, in the last lecture I told you that whenever we create new URLs or new routes, we have to add all of those things inside the project level URLs. So that's what we are doing. So my site.urls is your project level URLs, and what we are saying is we also want to include the URLs inside our polls application. So that's what we are doing right over here, and we want to match this path called as polls and slash. First save and let me run the server, and then I'll show you what do we mean by this polls and slash. Now let me open up the terminal, and here we can run the server by typing python manage.py, and we want to run our server. Now let me go to the home page, and the first thing that you can see over here is page not found 404. Now this is because we don't have any route that is matching the route path. You can see over here, after the slash we don't have any other parameter specified right over here. So you can call this as your route path, and that's what this error is saying. So you can read the error that URL patterns in order are polls and slash admin and slash. So what we can do is, okay, so maybe this looks interesting. Let me copy this and let me go right over here and let me press enter. So here it is. We get a response back saying that you are at polls index. So yes, we are getting some kind of a response. Now let us go back and investigate what happened. So if we go right over here, we can see that we have specified a specific route or a specific path, and for the route path, that is this one, we don't have to write that one. It is implied that all of these paths, they start after your route slash or after your route path, and we have mentioned the path as polls. So that's what we can view right over here. Now if you're wondering from where did we get this output, let us go back to our polls application and let us go back to our views file, and here we can see that we got a request, and for that request we send back a response. And if you see the body of the response, we are simply sending back a string which is called as hello world, you are at polls index, and that's what it is visible right over here. So even if all of these things sound a little bit confusing, don't worry. In the next lecture we will see how all of these things are wired up and how actually the request and the response cycle works inside Django.